would like to tell you about Washington Irving. Washington Irving was one of the first notable fiction writers of the American Romantic movement. Considered the first professional distinguished writer in the United States, with short stories like Rip Van Winkle and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Washington Irving was influential in the development of the short story form and helped to gain international respect for American literature. Washington Irving's writing career began with collaboration with his brother, William Irving, and another New York writer, James Kirk Paulding, in composing and editing the breezy pseudonymous Salma Gandhi. Irving was the first American to earn a comfortable living by his writing, is more than a historical oddity. He had grown up in a young republic, rapidly becoming more democratic and commercial. Irving showed other authors how to take advantage of consumer demands, but living in some uncertainty as to whether he belonged to literature or to what is now called popular culture. He trained to produce books rapidly while trying to satisfy simultaneously readers of various levels of sophistication. Irving wrote more than just short stories. His works included essays, poetry, travel writing, and biography, and for his works he achieved international acclaim. Irving's Legend of Sleepy Hollow plays an important role in literature, and not just for the popularization of the Headless Horseman. It's a classic example of the very popular genre of Gothic literature. Its subject is a legend predicated on the atmosphere of superstition, mystery, and gossip. The Romantic movement and the subgenre of the Gothic emerged as a response to the Enlightenment in the late 18th century. Elements of the Gothic include foreign places, supernatural or unexplained forces, terrifying thoughts, irrational behavior, clashing of different time periods, and a world of uncertainty. Romanticism is an artistic, literary, and intellectual movement that originated in Europe toward the end of the 18th century and was at its peak in the period from 1800 to 1850. Romanticism is characterized by its emphasis on emotion and individualism, as well as a glorification of all past and nature, preferring the medieval rather than the classical. It's a reaction to the ideas of the Industrial Revolution, the aristocratic social and political norms of the Age of Enlightenment, and the scientific rationalization of nature. Romanticism can be seen as a rejection of the percept of order, calm, harmony, balance, idealization, and rationality. Romanticism emphasized the individual, the subjective, the irrational, the imaginative, the personal, the spontaneous, the emotional, the visionary, and the transcendental. Among the characteristics attitudes of Romanticism were the following: a deepened appreciation of beauties of nature, a general exaltation of emotion over reason and the senses over intellect, a turning in upon the self and heightened examination of human personality and its moods and mental potentialities, a preoccupation with the genius, the hero, and the exaltation figure in general, and the focus on his patience and inner struggles, a new view of the artist as a supremely individual creator whose creative spirit is more important than strict adherence to formal rules and traditional procedures. Romanticism in English literature began in the 1790s with the publication of the lyrical ballads of William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Wordsworth's preface to the second edition of lyrical ballads, in which he described poetry as the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, became the manifesto of the English Romantic movement in poetry. William Blake was the third principal poet of the movement's early phase in England. Wealth of talents, including Friedrich Hölderlin, Edgar Allan Poe, Herman Melville, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Walt Whitman, the early Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, Ludwig Tieck and Friedrich Schlegel, Wilhelm Heinrich Wackenroder, and Friedrich Schelling belonged to this first phase. The second phase of Romanticism, comprising the period from about 1805 to the 1830s, was marked by a quickening of cultural nationalism and a new attention to national origins as attested by the collection and imitation of native folklore, folk ballads and poetry, folk dance and music. The legend of a Sleepy Hollow, as I said, can be called a Gothic tale, a fairy tale that will make you smile sometimes. These stories filled with ghosts are not all scary. On the contrary, they have a bit of humor, not the one from which the stomach aches, but one that becomes easy of the soul. It's a story of a little village where the main character, Ichabod Crane, which name by the way means unhappy crane, lived. He is a teacher at a local school. One of his hobbies is the mystic, and he especially loved the legend of the Headless Horseman. Ichabod Crane is the character who absolutely doesn't cause any special positive feelings, mainly because he considers himself better than others. But at the same time, it's absolutely the same as most of people: cowardly, greedy, and envious. He is extremely superstitious. His favorite book is a treatise about witches, and his hobby is to listen to horror stories in the company of old people. Especially he is interested in the legend of the Headless Horseman, the Jarred Genoese. He is also a lover of food. Oh, it sounds as a song as Irving expertly describes it. In addition, Ichabod, who doesn't have a handsome appearance, is loved by ladies. He decides to marry with a rich and beautiful girl, Katrina. But Ichabod doesn't set his sights on just anyone. Oh no, he is impressed with only the richest girl in the country, Katrina van Tassel. In the center of the story is a love triangle, and then appears Brombones, and they start to do each other dirty tricks. Ichabod is keen for the challenge, however, and after being invited to a dance at the Van Tassel's house, it looks as if all his hopes and dreams might come true. After a possible rejection, the naturally superstitious teacher finds himself going home, alone, from the party. It's then that he runs across the notorious supernatural figure that all the country discusses, the Headless Horseman. Whether the horseman truly does spirit away the teacher, or whether Ichabod merely flees Sleepy Hollow for good, is not known. What people do know, though, is that remains is his head and the shattered pumpkin along the side of a brook. And the most remarkable thing is that the disappearance of Crane gives the reason to new superstitions and legends. The style of writing is very interesting. He doesn't go as one style, then on behalf of the main character, then returns to the author, who recalls that these are just found entries or an entry from another person's words. Remarkably, that Irving turns into a joke a typical mystical story about ghosts so dear to the hearts of romantics, just with a few strokes of a pen. I can advise this collection to everyone. There is a mystic in it, but sometimes there are realistic reasons behind it. There are adventures and, of course, a drop of love. As a result, the book is not scary perfect, but nevertheless really atmospheric, and as for me, you should read it. It doesn't take much of your time. If you want to enjoy a beautiful language and unhurried narration in the evening with a cup of tea, this will be just what you need.